89. This is the height of what's called the Chickamauga War, or the Old Southwest War. The best way to look at this particular conflict, it's a secondary front to the American Revolution. So this war kicks off July 4th, 1776, after what is possibly the best breakup letter ever written. All the native populations on the Trans-Allegheny, so the western side of the Appalachian Mountains, are under treaty of the king to not mess with everybody on the east side. It's called the Line of Proclamation. It's a result of French-Indian War. And so that line sits pretty well for about 20 years. But these upstart colonists, future Americans, are not very good at listening to directions and being told what to do. So you have our first, you have the first settlers into this area, are a group called Long Hunters. I mentioned before when I talked about the geologic areas that we're just terrible at naming things. So Long Hunters are people who go hunting for a long time. So, but these gentlemen in a couple months would make more money than most people of their station just by coming out here, hunting, getting pelts, and bringing it back and trading it. It is a pretty perilous activity because you're away from home for a long time, and there's lots of people out here that may not necessarily want you to be hunting in their hunting lands too. So after a couple years of Long Hunters coming into the mountains, and then on this side, they started going, man, the hunting over here is awesome. But there's like open fields that have crops in them, but no one tends them. This place is paradise. So let's start moving over here. And so the first settlers come over, and they start settling in around what is now Kingsport, and then you have the first fort built at what is now Sycamore Shoals State Park. And this group of people get along okay with native populations. They're a decent trading partner. Most of the people that move here just want to be left alone, so there's an uneasy truce amongst them. Revolutionary War kicks off. That truce is gone. And so you have this group of people here call themselves the Watauguans. They dare later try to start their own state, who are now fighting against the native populations who are being armed and funded by the crown. And so that goes throughout the entire Revolutionary War. This group of people get called the Over Mountain Men because they go over the mountain when being threatened by the British, particularly by Patrick Ferguson to Kings Mountain, and whip up on the, what we call British, but really it's loyalists to the crown and Ferguson. Awesome breakpoint of the Revolutionary War. Sorry, turning point. Breakpoint is not a thing. Turning point of the Revolutionary War. And so these men, we think of this one action, but they're constantly fighting a war here. And so Revolutionary War ends. The British sign their treaty saying, yeah, we'll give up control of the Ohio River Valley, but they really don't like it. So they're constantly waging a proxy war through the native populations who keep fighting here. 1788, the summer before this battle, is the high water point. It is the bloodiest. It has the biggest upheavals in populations here. And this particular war band is under a person named John Watts. Watts has an anglicized name, and everything written is his English name. It's not his Cherokee name. You can read into that exactly probably how you want to politically. He has such a good fighting season that he decides with him and his roughly 300 with him that, you know what, I don't want to go back in winter in the lower towns. I want to stay up here. So he comes up to this hiding spot. We don't know exactly why, but I have a guess, and I'll tell you about that later. But he winters in this field. John Sevier, who summer of '88 gets arrested for treason for trying to create his own state, gets broken out of prison in North Carolina, and he gets pardoned, and it's a whole other awesome story that you'll have to come out to a different program for. So he misses most of this fighting season, so he's itching to go. So he is now holed up outside on the Buffalo Creek in the Trans-Washington County, Carter County, Elizabeth and Johnson City area. And he finds out through a series of spies that his mortal foe, Watts, is here. So his troops break camp, they ride horses all night to here, through waist to knee deep blowing snow. They get to the entrance of the creek, right about where Old Asheville Highway is, and there he hatches his plan. So he splits his forces of roughly 120 people. He has his best men, his bloody hatchet men, his rangers, who are really like 16, 17, 18-year-old young men, that they break foot and they go up around this back ridge behind you to the top of the valley, which is about 1.5 miles above us. And so they're meant to get up there and run real fast, get there before the rest of the force gets to this spot, and they're supposed to seal off the top of the valley. Seville's forces leave their horses about where you parked, they walk up 1 mile, they get to this spot at about 8 a.m. completely undetected. Severe, not to be outdone, brings a cannon with him. It is unfortunately not this big cannon that's on a wagon. It's a grasshopper cannon. So it shoots a projectile about the size of a softball. You strap the thing to a horse. When you deploy it, it goes in a box. So it's small. Sycamore Shoals has one. They shoot it off during the 4th of July. It's really cool. So his men get to the bottom of the field. They see the primitive winter camp of their foe. And at about 8:05, boom, cannon goes off, battle's on. So very quickly, John Sevier realizes that his 120 men group is outnumbered 2-1. He's attacking a much, much larger force of about 300. So this, what starts off as a one-way shooting range, turns into a two-way shooting range, which is suboptimal. So it's way better to be doing the shooting than being shot at. And so Sevier at this point has a choice. Either he can have his men tactically withdraw, so it's a fighting withdrawal, so you don't just run away, but you break contact because he's engaging a much larger force who are very skilled at what they do. Or he can keep the initiative and just close distance so you can't shoot anymore, you have to go hand to hand. Sevier chooses the latter. He has his men, so the ones that had bayonets draw bayonets, most of them are drawing axes, skinning knives, tomahawks, whatever blade-edged weapon that these frontiersmen had. They charge the field and it turns into a bloody slobber knocker of a fight. And the entire battle lasts roughly 30 minutes. At the end of the battle, Sevier holds the field. And he has, per his reports, 145 KIA on the field. He loses, which is right, 8 dead of his own and another 47 wounded. And that's the story. So we're going to walk to the top. I'm going to tell you what of that I can prove.